Well, that's a wrap, guys. Dolphins season is over. It has been a roller coaster ride. It's been down, it's been up, and now it crashed to reality here at Heinz Field in Pittsburgh. Miami Dolphins losing by the final score of 30-12. Dolphins fell in a hole early. Just a few minutes ago, Jason Leisure, defensive end Cameron Wake, just finishing up the first playoff game of his career, acknowledged that, in his words, quote, "the bleeding started early." And the Dolphins really, once again, got off to a poor start. They elected to kick off and defer to the second half, and boom, it happened right away on the first two drives. What do you think about the way the Dolphins started in this game?
Well, that kicking off, giving the Steelers the ball off the bat was questionable, but it may have gone that way anyway, Joe. The Steelers had a touchdown to Antonio Brown, a 50-yarder, 3 minutes into the game. Had another one of 60 yards to him just a few minutes later. The Dolphins, really, their kicking game was good. They had them backed up on both those drives, but it just didn't matter. There were coverage errors. Tony Lippett had some problems. Bakari Rambo with a missed tackle. The defensive line was nowhere, and you're down 14-0 on the road to Pittsburgh, and you've got a lot of question marks. One of the players said that was the game right there. Not that they had given up, but that, looking back on it, the game was over at that point.
All the things that we said the Dolphins needed to do in pregame to win, to have a chance, none of them came to fruition.
Do you want to go through those?
Very quick. I'm going to run through them, and you tell me which was the number one most damaging of these things that happened. Okay, number one, Matt Moore, 3 straight turnovers, including 2 fumbles and an interception after getting drilled and what appeared to be a concussion, but it was not. He was cleared to return. Number 2, J.J. needed to run the ball effectively. Didn't happen. Dolphins got blown back at the offensive line of scrimmage. Number 3, they needed to contain Antonio Brown. Didn't happen. Tony Lippett and Bakari Rambo were liabilities in the Dolphins secondary. And number 4, the Dolphins didn't get a pass rush. Cameron Wake and Ndamukong Suh were non-factors. In the games in which the Dolphins played well and won this year, those guys were big factors. Which of those jump out to you as the most problematic?
Well, I don't know if it's necessarily the most problematic, but the one that definitely jumps out to me right off the bat is Matt Moore. I thought Matt Moore, and you thought Matt Moore, would play a lot better than this. And his turnovers, really the turnovers that he had, came at the only time you thought they might get back into the game. The Dolphins were down here at this end of the field, down to the Pittsburgh 8-yard line, Joe, and he gives up the ball on a strip sack. I believe it was James Harrison.
Yeah.
And then another fumble kind of running into Jay Ajayi when they were at the Pittsburgh 37 coming out of halftime.
It was also on a blitz.
It was back-to-back chances where, if they scored touchdowns, it'd be a tie game. But even if they hadn't, even if you get field goals in that spot, Joe, it's 20-12. It's a one-score game, and they feel like they're back in it at that point.
Now, head coach Adam Gase basically blamed the offensive line. He absolved Matt Moore of basically all 3 turnovers. He said on the 2 blitz sacks, turnovers, those were blitzes that the Dolphins offensive line had successfully picked up in the past. And on the interception, he basically said, hey, it was a bad call by me. There's no way Matt Moore could have seen that player dropping back. So I do want to tell you that I listened to head coach Adam Gase after the game. He was very upset, and I like that. I like the fact that he and the Dolphins didn't take the mentality that it was just good enough to get there.
Even though it is.
It really is.
For this team,
I told you before the game.
Year?
Yeah, I said even if you get drilled 34-7, and then I kind of amended that and said, well, 34-17. At one point, I said to Jason, what was my call there? 34-7.
Joe likes to,
well,
do you remember what that was?
When I'm right.
When I was right about something?
I was wrong about my.
What that was?
I was wrong about my premonition that Jakeem Grant was going to have a big return. Instead, he fumbled.
Right.
And I got to be honest, Jakeem Grant's got a big uphill if he's going to be a part of this team next year. Yeah, he might not be a part of the team.
The reason that you have a guy like that on your roster is that you don't have to risk Jarvis Landry out there returning punts, which is a dangerous game. We all know that. And if he's putting you if Grant's putting you in a position where you have to go to Grant, you have to go to Landry because he's the only one you can trust, then he's not really serving his purpose on the roster. Joe, let me give you Matt Moore's numbers here, and we'll move on to Jay Ajayi. Matt Moore today, 29 of 36, passing 289 yards. 1 touchdown, 1 interception, 2 fumbles. He was sacked 5 times for 36 yards.
His passer rate.
97.8.
That's better than his career average. That would place him in the top 8 among NFL quarterbacks this year. So I know
that's right around what he's been.
People killed Phil Simms for what he said on CBS, which is that aside from the 3 turnovers, he played really well. But it's a fact. Aside from the 3 turnovers, he did play really well. Now, that doesn't mean that Matt Moore is better than Ryan Tannehill.
Almost everything Matt Moore does, Ryan Tannehill does better.
Yeah, in terms of mobility, accuracy, throwing on the run,
strength, arm strength.
Usually protecting the football.
Yeah.
I mean, we have every reason to believe that Ryan Tannehill will be back and ready to be the Dolphins quarterback. He was walking around the Dolphins locker room without a limp. Jason Leisure can usually read those questions a little better than me from here.
Yeah, send in your questions, comments, guys. We'll try to get that.
Some in, and we'll try to hit them.
With regard to Matt Moore, you mentioned the hit that he took from Bud Dupree. We heard a lot of guys talking about that in the locker room. I didn't really hear anyone too angry about it. They didn't like it at the time. There was some kind of sense of they were all right with it because Matt Moore came back and because the officials penalized it in the moment. It's not like Bud Dupree.
It was a penalty.
It's not like he got away with that. He was flagged for that.
Jermon Bushrod told me that he was upset. And if you guys are curious, Jermon Bushrod told me after the game that if he plays in the NFL next season, it would be with the Miami Dolphins. Otherwise, I think you'll see him retire. So certainly every chance that Jermon Bushrod has played his last game with the Miami Dolphins. Andre Branch, defensive end, also unsure about his future, which is interesting. He is a free agent. Of course, it'll all come down to do the Miami Dolphins value him as much as some other team. And there's 31 other teams that can pay him more. So more often than not, these guys leave.
I also spoke with Andre Branch about that topic, and he was non-committal. But he did say, Joe, this was the most fun season he's ever had. That he has never been part of a team that's like this. That he said he has brothers now from this team that he's never really experienced that, and we'll see how much that's worth, literally, when it gets to free agency.
And we'll see if Jarvis Landry and Schad Jones get their contracts this offseason. Jarvis Landry is not up. He has 1 year left on his deal, but I wouldn't put it past him to hold out if he's not given an extension. In the same way Schad Jones held out for like a week last year.
Jarvis Landry today was targeted 14 times, by far the most on the team. That's about half.
102 yards receiving.
102 yards on 11 catches. Clearly, their most consistent offensive player. I would argue their best offensive player. Certainly their most consistent. Jay Ajayi voted the team MVP. Very up and down season for him. His numbers today: 16 carries for 33 yards. That's 2.1 yards per carry. Obviously not good enough. What did you see as far as Ajayi to blame for that versus maybe the offensive line at fault there?
There was nowhere to run. I mean, it's usually the case when the running back gets a lot of yards, he gets too much credit and not enough attention is given to what the offensive line did. And when the running back is stuffed, the light is not bright enough on the Miami Dolphins offensive line. That's exactly what happened here today. I said before the game, and it's the case in most games, you'd be able to tell whether or not the Dolphins won based on Jay Ajayi's statistics. He ran for 200 yards 3 times, including against this Pittsburgh Steelers defense, but that was a completely different Steelers defense. Ryan Shazier didn't play. The Notre Dame defensive lineman, his name escapes me, Stephon Tuitt, either didn't play or barely played in the last game. So this defense was very fired up. Someone asking about Vance Joseph.
Daniel Durazo says it's good if Vance Joseph leaves because he's not pleased with how the defense played today.
What was that stat that I gave you? In the last 6 games of the regular season, the Dolphins gave up about...
They gave up an average of 436 yards. Today, Joe, they gave up 367 yards. But really, it could have been a lot more. I think the Steelers kind of went very conservative once they had the big lead.
You know, in college football, it's very hard, which is what I did for the last 11 years, for any of you guys that don't know. It's very hard to sell the boosters and the fans and recruits on bringing in a head coach who's coming off a tough statistical season. Now, Vance Joseph is a candidate for a lot of jobs, and he's going to get interviewed by a lot of people.
Particularly in Denver.
I'm told it's different in the NFL, that even though the Dolphins just had the worst statistical defense in the history of the franchise,
yardage-wise,
that an owner can still sell him as the right guy. So we'll see if that happens.
Yeah,
I still think it's more likely than not that Vance Joseph returns.
We're both very interested to see that. Vance Joseph, it bears noting that he was missing so many guys. They were missing not just today, but throughout the year, just different guys going out. And we both think this of Vance Joseph, absolutely head coaching material as far as his personality. Very, very cerebral, very calm, very seems like someone that will definitely be a steady leader at some point.
I mean, look, the Dolphins didn't have enough personnel on defense, particularly at the linebacker position, when healthy. And then you cannot dismiss the fact The Dolphins were missing 3/4 of their starting secondary today.
Yeah.
It's just a fact. You would have had a rotation of Howard, Lippett, and Maxwell. And you know what? Lippett played pretty well in games in which he wasn't matched with A.J. Green and Antonio Brown. And that's no mistake. Tony Lippett made great progress this year, but he is not ready to handle the likes of A.J. Green and
Antonio Brown. He was not even close on Antonio Brown. And Tony Lippett, understandably very upset after the game. All he really had to say about it was, I have to play better. I have to play better. And he does. I mean, he could not handle Antonio Brown, and I think if he was honest, he'd have to admit that as well.
I think the Dolphins will be okay in the secondary next year if all those guys come back.
Well, you like Maxwell and you like Howard for sure. I mean, those are good starters.
And I think Lippett, McCain, and Jones and Isa Abdul-Quddus, they're fine. The Dolphins must add 2 premier linebackers.
Yeah, one of our regular readers, Chip, just wrote in with basically that. Yeah.
I'm sure that Mike Tannenbaum and or Chris Greer are watching this right now, or one of their buddies is watching this right now, and I'm not surprised that, I know you know too, all you guys know, that they are not good at all at the linebacker.
Huge need. We think they have a lot of talent in the secondary. They've obviously spent a lot of money and have great talent up
Someone
front.
says Kiko was bad. Kiko was hurt. Kiko's fine. You know what? If you can play weak side linebacker, and you hire some sort of thumper in the middle, somebody who can run and hit. The Dolphins didn't have a linebacker all year who could create fear for the opposition.
No, certainly not.
You want a dude that's standing in the middle of the field to create fear for the opposition.
Joe, we're getting a lot of comments in here about next year. Just a lot of them. People very excited about next year. When we went into the locker room today, sure enough, the owner of the team, Stephen Ross, was waiting there to take some questions, and he said unequivocally he's upset about this, but that he's got the right coach and the right people in place to move this team toward a Super Bowl. Which, Super Bowl is a very lofty goal, but it's hard for anyone.
Didn't he once say that Schad Henne was their best quarterback?
He said a lot of things that he may wish he could pull back. But I think we all agree, you and I certainly agree, and I think almost anyone would agree, this team is really headed in the right direction. 6-10 last year. Now you go into your first year with a new coach in Adam Gase. He's dealing with a roster that he didn't entirely put together, and you get this result. You get 10-6. I think that's pretty good. I think that's definitely a good start.
That's what I'm going to write about on the Palm Beach Post's Daily Dolphin tomorrow. It'll be posted later tonight, and you can read it tomorrow also in the Palm Beach Post on your local newsstands. Everybody gets the Monday paper, right? Why not? Pick it up. You know what? Why not? The Dolphins have played their second playoff game in 15 years. This was a big deal.
Yeah,
this was a big deal. By the way, can you name the only 2 players to score Dolphins playoff touchdowns in the last 15 years?
To
Dolphins
throw for or score?
To score. Well, can you guys name who are the 2 Dolphins? We'll give you a minute. Who are the 2 Dolphins to score touchdowns in the playoffs, counting today, in the last 15 years?
All right, yeah.
We'll give them a chance.
Send those in. We'll give you a little time to figure that out. The offensive line in general, Joe, we know that they've got Laramie Tunsil. He's going to be there for a while. Juwan James, he's going to be there for a while. The rest of it, Mike Pouncey is healthy right now. No surgery for him. He talked in the locker room as well. No problems whatsoever for him as far as his offseason. So you have those 3 guys.
This guy got it. Alexander got it. Ronnie Brown and Damian Williams. You got it. Only 2 Dolphins to score touchdowns.
Robert Slattery with that.
In the last 15 years. Go ahead.
Is this offensive line good enough to bring back, or do they need to add here?
Okay. So we asked Laramie Tunsil after the game, do you want to play tackle? And this is a sensitive subject for Laramie Tunsil.
Because he sits right next to Brandon Albert.
You're looking at me like you really want to know the answer.
I do. I really want to know what he said when he's got basically his uncle standing next to him.
Yeah. So he said, look, I'll play quarterback, right guard, right tackle, defensive tackle, whatever it takes to help. But
I've actually seen him throw. He can throw.
He can throw. He really can. James. But I would tell you right now that Tunsil would like to play left tackle next year. Now, he's not going to tell his mentor, Brandon Albert, that. But a very interesting decision. I did not talk to Brandon. Did you? I don't know if he talked about his
very
future.
Very briefly, not about that.
But future, because he's got a $10 million deal for next season. Now, he was injured, but he played at an average to below average level this year. Chip and a lot of other people want Tunsil at tackle.
Chip's writing in Tunsil at right tackle, which I assume
Juwan James had a good year. Juwan James is fine.
Yeah.
What would you do? Would you keep Brandon Albert and try to bring him back at a reduced rate, or would you leave it the way it is?
I
or move Tunsil?
I think that just practically speaking, you might have to look at moving Albert because you need that money for other things. That offensive line, as good as it was and as much money and draft picks as they sunk into that, it wasn't always there for him, and it wasn't just because of injury. A lot of times, Jermon Bushrod had one of the worst seasons of any guard in the league, and it only takes one guy for that offensive line to not be what you think it is and to not be worth all that money you're putting into it.
Yeah, I agree. The Dolphins, every year it seems like they need 2 guards, and I think there's a chance they move Tunsil to tackle and then need to sign 2 guards, unless you think that Urbic can play guard, which I think at worst he's a backup center / third guard. I think we learned this year that he's a competent player. I'm pretty sure he is under contract.
The troubling thing for the Dolphins in trying to figure out this offensive line, Joe, is Mike Pouncey. Because you took him so high and you've put so much money and you've built so much around him in terms of your planning, you assume that he's going to be back, and he's been mostly healthy.
But he wants to move Mike Pouncey to guard. Mike Pouncey is one of the best.
No, Mike Pouncey's fine where he is
in the NFL.
But my concern is whether or not he'll be healthy.
And by the way, the Dolphins do not believe that Pouncey is any more susceptible to injury at the center position.
It's tough with Pouncey because he had not missed a lot of games prior to this year, but he has had recurrences of this hip problem. And you wonder if that's going to be something that just continues on for the rest of his career.
All right, let's talk big picture. We want you guys send a few questions that you want to know about the season overall and the future. Okay, so let's go big picture for a minute. I'm going to give you a couple of problems, and you tell me how you think the Dolphins can fix them. Okay? So in other words, draft, free agency, re-sign a guy. Okay. Kenny Stills.
I think they bring him back at the right price. I think that their skill guys, their complementary receivers, is pretty good.
Andre Branch.
That might be a guy they have to let go because of the price. He had a really good season this year. They may have to go somewhere else with that. But we do expect they'll be off the hook for Mario Williams' salary, so maybe they can't afford Andre Branch.
We all agree Mario Williams has played his last game as a Miami.
Did he get in today?
Yeah, he played.
He did. He was out
he
there.
Played. He did. I don't know if he made a tackle or a sack. I know there were 5 games this year where he did not make a tackle or a sack. Tight end.
Tight end is a place that you got to go in the draft. I think those kind of players are not available in free agency typically, not the ones you need.
Tomorrow night you're going to see a guy wearing number 88 for Alabama. He's the tight end. His name is O.J. Howard. He will be in the conversation for the Miami Dolphins in the first round if they go tight end. Let's see, what else? Linebacker.
Mario Williams, by the way, you mentioned.
Go ahead.
Him,
Did he get a tackle or sack?
No, nothing. 0.
Oh, Mario! And what could have been
Mario?
And what could have been his last and first NFL playoff game ever? Didn't have a tackle or a sack.
Tight end, you go to the draft for sure, don't you think?
Tight end.
That's where that answer is going to be.
Linebacker.
That might be their first round pick this year.
Free agency or draft?
Linebacker. I'd prioritize tight end in the draft, and maybe look for a later round linebacker and maybe a free agent linebacker as well.
Yeah, they need
Jelani Jenkins will be a free agent. It's going to be interesting to see if they want to bring him back because he's been hurt a lot, and even when he's been healthy, he might not be quite to the level that they need as a starting linebacker.
Cameron Wake is 34 years old. You just cut Jason Jones. You don't know if Andre Branch is coming back. I hate to say it, but defensive end could also be a position of need. It would be nice to get a guy, one of those hybrid guys, that can play defensive end / outside linebacker, who can do both, who can put his hand on the ground on third down. Every team in the NFL looks for these guys. Robert says linebacker offensive line. Everybody was, the Dolphins have invested so much money. I tell you what, their plan seems to be working. When I say their plan, I feel like the number one most important part of the Miami Dolphins' long-term plan for success is investing money on the offensive and defensive lines.
Yeah.
And I think that plan is a good idea.
That's about half their salary cap on those two
on the lines.
On the lines together, yeah.
All right, let me ask you this. Let's have a brief conversation about this. Now that the season is completely over, on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the most, how much confidence do you have that Ryan Tannehill is good enough as your Miami Dolphins quarterback?
Good enough for what? He's
good. All right, I'll make it more specific. On a scale of 1 to 10, how confident are you that Ryan Tannehill, surrounded by premium talent, can lead the Dolphins to an AFC Championship game?
That's a tough one, man. I don't think that he is that guy. Wow. I think that Ryan Tannehill can play very well when everything around him is going well. I don't think he's the kind of difference maker like Ben Roethlisberger is, or like in my opinion, Tony Romo would be if they could get in that game.
We're getting a couple of 9s. Dolphins, by the way, can't bring in Tony Romo. We don't need that.
What do you mean?
Well, but sign him?
Yeah.
He's like 35.
Tony Romo, I think, is still one of those game-changing.
He might even be older. Does he still date country music singers?
I would have no idea about that.
What was the name of that?
Carrie Underwood.
The other one too, the young one.
Oh, I didn't know there was another one.
Yeah.
Maybe you guys.
Who did Tony Romo date? Guys, help me out here.
I can't believe that we ended up there in this conversation.
Jessica Simpson.
I don't know.
Jessica Simpson, right, guys?
Let Joe know if he's right about it.
I believe it was Jessica Simpson. Okay, so this will be good.
Tannehill's fine, by the way.
No.
Fine. He's just not. He's not a transcendent star quarterback who's going to elevate, everything around.
Jessica Simpson. Thank you, Robert. She came out with like a clothing line and a fragrance. I digress. So
really?
We have a lot of time in the off season to write about these things.
Yes.
And don't let me forget. I'm going to write, I'm all in on Tannehill, and you're going to write, I'm not so sure. Got it?
That's a strong take.
No, we could do that this week.
I like that opinion from me. I'm not so sure. Kind of a tepid, like,
Someone said no Romo, which is funny if you're like 14 years old. No Romo? Okay. Who cares? Yeah, I understand. It's been a long season. No one cares about Romo. There you go. Not that you don't care about us. You don't care about Romo.
Well, he might not care about me.
Now, Ryan Tannehill is due to get a large bump in salary.
Large is an understatement.
But
$20 million.
When guys like Tyrod Taylor, who's probably going to be gone next season, make a lot of money, get paid a lot of money. When guys like Brock Osweiler get paid a lot of money, everybody wants to know about Deion Jordan.
Finish your point on that.
Ryan Tannehill is fairly compensated. Fairly compensated. Thank you very much for watching. The guy that said something nice about us. I appreciate that. I missed your name, but we like it when people have been so nice to me this year. Can I just say that, Jason? Yeah. In my last job, a lot of people gave me a lot of mean tweets. And it was rough. I'm a sensitive guy. But since I've rejoined the Miami Dolphins beat, people have been very nice to me.
That's good.
So I appreciate it. It makes my life a little nicer every day.
Makes me happy to hear it.
Yeah.
At some point before all that, you were making a point about Ryan Tannehill.
Thank you guys.
You were talking about Ryan Tannehill, $20 million next season.
Yeah, I think it's a fair salary.
Okay, all right.
I think it's a fair salary, and I think the Dolphins...
That's how much Cam Newton makes.
This is a good blog for later in the week. The Dolphins have a lot of problems, but Ryan Tannehill ain't one.
I like how you get in like a stance.
No, I'm saying I'll do
listen up, guys.
99 problems, but RT ain't one.
Well, they don't have 99
that?
problems, which is a step forward for them because often in the last few years they have had 99 problems.
We do plan to have Facebook Lives, in all likelihood, from the Senior Bowl, which is only a couple of weeks away in Mobile, Alabama, the NFL Scouting Combine, which is in a month and a half in Indianapolis. And then before you know it, they'll have some rookie mini camps.
Sure.
Right. We'll be talking to the stud linebacker that the Dolphins drafted, the exciting wide receiver who they're going to try to have catch punts for the first time. That happens every year.
Right.
The young backup quarterback who's going to fight Brandon Doughty for the third string position.
Right.
Will TJ Yates be back?
Probably not. Good guy.
Matt Moore is under contract for next year. And you
know
what? One thing the Dolphins don't have to worry about is the backup quarterback. All right, so let's wrap this up so we can go write our stories. How would you describe, in 3 words, and you guys chip in here too, this 2016 Miami Dolphins season? 3 words.
Do I have to go 3 or can I just pick one? I got to use the full salary cap of 3?
Up to 3 words.
It was impressive.
Okay.
How about that?
Impressive.
Are you looking for a sentence
or
like 3 adjectives?
No, we'll take turns.
Okay.
I do this with my daughter.
Impressive. Okay.
Impressive. Go ahead.
Impressive, exciting,
okay.
compelling.
Okay. Overachieving.
Oh, that's a good one.
That's good. That's why I'm a paid journalist.
There you go.
Overachieving, enjoyable. Definitely was enjoyable.
Because people were nice.
And hopeful.
There you go.
Hopeful because, and I'm going to write about that for tomorrow, because despite getting your butts kicked today, here on a very cold day, and I'm so glad I was able to sit in the press box.
It was cold in the press box still.
You guys who didn't travel here, and could trust me, you could have gotten in for $30, but you don't want to sit out there.
No.
You do not want to sit out there. So those are some good words to end the season. It has been a lot of fun working with my partner, Jason Leisure. and we're going to come back. We just like Andre Branch. We have every intention to return for the 2017 season, and we hope that next year we increase another 50% as we did
There you go.
this season. Thanks, guys.